The most satisfying work I do is helping people learn. And if I can inspire someone or enable them to do something better or to take a step up, that's very cool, yeah.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
Newly arrived from St. Helena of all places, my guest today is Leigh Morris. Leigh is the recently appointed CEO of the Manx Wildlife Trust, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to have him tell you his story so far. It's a distinguished career in his pursuit of his true vocation. I hope you enjoy as much as I did hearing about lightbulb moments in his life and the pivotal part of his career which has brought him here to the Isle of Man. Thanks for listening to Island Influencers. It's lovely to meet you finally, Leigh, as we didn't manage to meet before we went into lockdown, and you've quite recently arrived on the Isle of Man. So when did you actually arrive? When did you get here?
I came across the week of about the 10th of January initially with a van on a quick to and fro, and then moved across on the 10th of January to start work on Monday the 13th.
Well, what we normally do in Island Influencers, and welcome as my guest, of course, I should have said that right at the beginning, is usually go back in time and find out all about you, where you've come from. And I mean, I asked you to send through a bio, and I've never seen such a comprehensive CV in my life. It's very impressive. So perhaps you could take us back to where you grew up, where you went to school. Yes,
I'm delighted to. I guess I should say it first. I'd like to say it first that I'm quite humbled by being asked to be on this.
Really?
Genuinely, I've not listened to every one of the podcasts, but I've listened to the majority of them, and I think to be asked to be part of this when I've only been here for 4 months, so to speak, is lovely. So I do this with some humility, I hope, but lots of enthusiasm, as you'll no doubt find out. So. I'm from Yorkshire originally, east coast of Yorkshire, Bridlington, and then was brought up in York. So most of my childhood was actually in York, and then left there to go to Worcestershire, Worcestershire to North Wales to Edinburgh, and then bit back into England, St. Helena for a couple of years, and then the Isle of Man.
That's crazy. To have gone out there. I looked at your CV and it said in one part that you were actually in Yemen doing something.
I don't know how you'll take us through this chat, but
me either.
A big part of my life. I've been lucky, very fortunate to have visited some amazing places for different jobs, and certainly I spent a 10-year period working for the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh. Where I was involved in capacity building and development work around horticulture and botanical gardens and plant conservation in some very, very diverse locations, ranging from the island of Socotra in Yemen, which is gobsmacking. It's like a set from Doctor Who, huge rafts of baobabs and agave and all sorts on there. So a spectacular place. That was the Yemen story.
I noted that you were the president of the Chartered Institute of Horticulture, and you actually got your Royal Charter when you were there. That's a massive achievement. Well done.
Yeah, again, being humble. I was in the chair role, but I had some excellent colleagues that went through the nitty-gritty of the process. But certainly, in council meetings for a couple of years, this was top of the agenda.
Sure.
And getting right to the point where we've suddenly got the vellum produced. I mean, literally, it's all done on vellum.
Yeah.
We got to the place where that was there. And I think for me, I would absolutely say I'm a horticulturist. And for many years, I've been championing that horticulture is not a dirty word. It's not for the lesser abled. There's some fantastic careers working with plants outside, which leads into conservation and arboriculture and everything else that goes with that. But certainly with horticulture, I think to get chartered status for a horticulturist was an important landmark for the whole of the sector.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted to have been in that role for the professional body when, and to be actually, the one bit of comedy around this is that because I was the president of the chartered body when we got chartered status, initially we had to get the first few people to go to become chartered horticulturists. And of course, there's a rigour and a quality assurance for that process. And we set up a sub-board to do it. And I think 5 of us were the first tranche that went through to get that status. But of course, the person that actually signs the chartered certificates is the president. So not only do I have the first certificate, but I've signed my own. So I don't know if by default it's actually not worth anything. But I don't think...
Oh, no, absolutely it is.
No one else, because all the next president that was lined up went through the process, so I signed his and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. So I will probably, ironically, be the only ever chartered horticulturist that signed his own certificates. It doesn't have quite as much credibility.
Well, so we're chartered as well, the Chartered Financial Planners, and so we come under the Chartered Insurance Institute's Royal Charter. And ours is quite old. It's well over 100 years, that Royal Charter. And the only thing, I was president of the Personal Finance Society part of it, and the only thing that my signature ever appeared on any other president's signature is the exam certificates for anybody who passes one of the exams, the advanced diploma exams that you pass. So maybe your successors get to sign the exam certificates, maybe.
I mean, you'll know then that chartered status is in some careers, in some professions, and the listeners will know that as well, that it really does mean something.
Totally.
And the ambition
everything.
in the Institute of the Chartered Institute of Horticulture was always that a horticulturist would be a quality person, not the last thing that's thought about when a planning project comes along. You go for a chartered surveyor, chartered accountant, etc. to do why wouldn't you have a chartered horticulturist to come and worry about the plants and the greening around those projects? And I think that lifts the game. And of course it needs adoption, and people need to recognise that, and it needs to drip out and become a culture. But you have to get that first peg in place.
Yeah, and they don't just give out royal charters. You have to increase engagement. You have to justify public confidence and trust in what you do in order to had it awarded in the first place. So I mean, I picked this out and I just thought that's great. That's for me that's a real highlight there. But you've got lots of highlights. I mean, going right back, where did you go to school before? Because you went on to do a BTEC in horticulture first off, didn't you?
So I passed my 11 plus. I went to Nunthorpe Grammar School for Boys in York.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and it wasn't until I did teacher training years later that I realised the difference between. I am an active and kinesthetic learner. I like to learn by doing things, and I didn't realise that till I did teacher training years later. So as an active person in a grammar school with 30 boys in the class with a teacher and a piece of chalk, told to pretty much in most sessions to be quiet, listen, and write, it wasn't my best learning style. So I didn't do badly at school, but I didn't shine. But when I then subsequently went into horticulture as an apprentice and then went to land-based college, again, I won't be modest, I shone. It was transformational for me, because suddenly I could, for example, if I read a book about, or someone lectured me about how to strip a tractor engine down, if I really concentrated, it would go in. But if I took a tractor engine apart and put it back together again, I had no problem answering an exam question in detail. I can write the essay, I can transcribe the words, but the learning element is far stronger by doing. And I think that knowledge about that, and I think a lot of people that work in land-based careers, agriculture, horticulture, arboriculture, fisheries, forestry, I could go on, a lot of those people are active kinesthetic people. And
it's wider than you think.
In education, they were often referred to as being, the naughties or the disaffected or the lesser academic. It's just a different learning style. And when you get the concept of learning styles and then the psychology of that, if you then transpose that into other areas of life, once you understand that people are different, it's a bit of a light bulb moment. And then be it in education, in business, in trying to organise an event, understanding that people have different preferences is a key tool to have in your locker, actually. So Nunthorpe Grammar School for Boys, then to Askham Bryan College, and then to Worcestershire to study nursery stock production, because my apprenticeship had actually been in a tree and shrub nursery, learning everything from chip budding and bench grafting to tying up lots of bundles of berberis in winter. And all the what I call my Karate Kid years were spent in fields in a very large nursery in the north of England. So yeah, that's how I sort of my career started.
So after you did that apprenticeship, you seem to have just had a meteoric rise then, the head of Division of Horticulture and Commercial Operations at the Welsh College of Horticulture. Then moving on, you did the Chartered Institute of Horticulture. You were, from what I can see, you were at the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh at the time that happened too. Is that right?
Yeah, so I feel it's quite, again, I feel a bit humbled. I don't think I've genuinely, apart from being in a job interview, had anyone show so much interest in my CV. So it's quite nice. And it's okay, let me rewind a bit. So I think without going into all that detail, I think the way my career progressed went from being a nursery manager, growing plants, learning how to do that, to then getting involved in supporting student learning, because I managed a plant nursery, a commercial one, but it was based in a large horticultural college in Pershore in Worcestershire. And through that got involved in upskilling people. The students would come along and do projects in the nursery, and I'd also get involved in some practical assisting of some of their sessions. I learned to be an assessor, helped with NVQs. And then it was actually the guy that used to be the head of education at Pershore had become the principal of the college in North Wales. And he rang me up one day and said, Leigh, how do you fancy coming to be a lecturer and training officer in North Wales? So clearly I'd showed him something that led him to believe that I would be okay in that role. And he had a bit of a steer for me, because when I got up there, I discovered that they actually had a huge nursery of glasshouses and outdoor crops and an ambition for an organic farm. And quite quickly, not only was I lecturing, but I was also managing all the commercial horticultural facilities as well. So, but it was nice because suddenly I could pull it together and actually completely integrate the teaching into the activities of the commercial operation. And I think when you go down that way, it shouldn't be a culture of them and us. And in many different walks of life, I do believe probably that's one of my ways of working, is that collaboration, integration, finding ways to do things better would be something that I've always tried to do. And for the Welsh College, for example, when I got there, the nursery manager and the supervisors, the students were up the hill in their own little private potting bench, and the nursery was down, this huge nursery was down the bottom on its own. Now, it didn't take that long for the culture to change, where probably, I won't exaggerate, but maybe within a year, the culture went from that to the supervisors fighting over the students every week when we decided what practicals they were going to do, because one of them wanted them to run his potting line, another one wanted them to go out and help plant something, and it changed the culture. And of course, the learning for the students then is that much better because they're doing real activities.
Yeah, far more engaging.
That's exactly why land-based colleges had set up these facilities. It was to train students, but again, without the whole politics of land-based colleges coming out in this. There was a bit of quite a change for land-based colleges when they went through incorporation in the early 90s. So that was that story. And then
because they had to be run as businesses as opposed to
they had to be run as business. It was far more commercial. And sadly, and after many years of reflection, quite often when something changes, things change. They go from the switch completely goes from one side to the other. And I think that was the case in colleges. So, for example, when I was brought up in Yorkshire and I went initially to Aston Bryan to do a general horticulture course, because I'd done my apprenticeship in a production nursery, I wanted to go on to a higher level at a specialist college in the UK that taught nursery stock and tree growing production. And there were two. There was one in Hadlow and there's one in Pershore. And at the time, Yorkshire Authority would support me and give me a grant to go and study at the Centre of Excellence for my career. Then in 92, that all changed. And suddenly the 30 or 40 land-based colleges, if you had one polythene tunnel and a 10 square metre plot with a few trees in, you could legitimately be a place where your authority would say, you need to stay and study there. We're not going to fund you to go to the UK Centre of Excellence. So it became very regionalised. And there was a huge long story around how the land-based sector, agriculture, horticulture, etc., had to try and respond to that. And I probably hasn't fully responded to that across yet.
No, okay, it's really interesting. There's to hear that. I mean, the Isle of Man is very much linked. Well, it's because we're 88% of our land or something is down to agricultural management. So it's kind of it's very important for the Isle of Man to realise that sector and its evolvement. So, thank you for sharing that. So how did you then end up getting to the Royal Botanic Garden of Edinburgh?
Probably a little bit of seeing a door and going open. There was one landmark event for my life that happened while I was in Wales, in that I realised what a bigger world it was. One day in Wales, I got something in my pigeonhole saying that there was something called Rotary International, and there was someone on a group study exchange from Turkey who was visiting North Wales and North East England, and she was a chrysanthemum grower, and could I please give her a guided tour of the chrysanthemum glasshouses at the Welsh College? So, of course, I was delighted to do that. I remember Naz. I remember showing around, and she gave me a little blue Turkish glass eye as a memento, and it was lovely. And then about 2 weeks later, I had a letter from Mould Rotary Club, who thanked me for showing Naz around the commercial nursery and said, please find enclosed a poster for our group study exchange team to go to India and Nepal in 1999. And so I put it on the wall, but I also applied and rolled up in Chester for a selection day.
Yeah.
Was told to prepare off the hoof a presentation on why I should be sent to Nepal and West Bengal. And an hour and a half later, I was told I was going for 6 weeks to West Bengal and Nepal. So that I then went on there was 4 of us went, young professionals was Rotary's way.
Yeah.
And I have to say that was a transformational 6 weeks in my life. So when you go on something like that, you see what Rotary is capable of doing in another country. So we went, it was very much to West Bengal typically. So we went to a leprosy hospital. We went to water pump projects. I also got the opportunity to go and see some of my own vocational work. So I went to a farm diversification project in the mouth of the Ganges, where they were going away from local subsistence rice growing to cash crops of tomatoes and intercropping with bananas and sending those to markets. I went to a tea plantation in Darjeeling. It was, and we were doing presentations everywhere. We were presenting to more roads, but it was life changing in that for the first
opportunity.
In the first time in my life, I was actually seeing firsthand a developing country, and when you see a rural school. And literally, it's mud floors and kids of sharing a bit of blackboard and a piece of chalk. And that's how it is. So that was transformational for me. And I came back from that trip in 99 knowing that the world was a bigger place. It changed me forever. And on that, I then went and I then made the decision. I went off and studied a master's in international horticulture and
Yeah, sure.
And then got the opportunity. The job in Edinburgh came up, and I went to Edinburgh, and it was synchronous because they were involved in international capacity building, and so I got involved in that. But one story about Nepal or Kathmandu, we had one day where we went to. It was on the itinerary. It said visit a water pump project, have lunch, visit a water pump project, and we'd been going for about 4 or 5 weeks at this point. So we certainly weren't jaded, but we were probably a little tired on reflection. It was full itineraries, full on.
Yeah.
We were wined and dined, but we were presenting and seeing lots and meeting lots of people. And we went to the water pump project home where we rocked up at this field. We got out of our Morris Ambassador cars. We went across, met one very nice Nepalese guy, Namaste, and we met him, and he showed us his little concrete pump house and the top of his pump where it went down into and how it told us then how his village has been transformed, and we thought that was very nice. And we went and had lunch, and then we thought, we're going to another one. And we rocked up at this other one, and we could hear music. And we parked about, a quarter of a mile away, and we could hear music, and we could see this hill with all these people sat on it. And as we got closer, there was a marquee with chairs and flowers and a stage, and people with microphones were there. And the whole village was there waiting to meet the 4 of us who were wearing a badge with Rotary International, the whole village. And we were like an hour and a half late because that's just the culture. So these people had waited an hour and a half for us to rock up. We were just 4 people. And they were coming up in tears, and they were giving us garlands, and it was all about how transformational a water pump funded by Rotary International, had changed their lives of the people in the village. So that was a real wonderful moment, but also a life changer for me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it makes you kind of reconsider perhaps your own lives and how lucky we all are. First world problems. You're not without water or electricity, are you? But yet, in many countries still around the world, it's the inequality is breathtaking. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that story. That's really fascinating. Well, look, after you went, you eventually found yourself in Edinburgh. Somehow, throughout your career, you've been able to take up these. Well, you've been offered these opportunities that have been quite amazing. What eventually took you to St Helena?
I think it was just both my wife and I were in a place where we decided we collectively wanted a change, and we both were scoping out where we might go next. And ironically, I got offered a job somewhere else, wonderful job. My wife got offered a job on St Helena. She didn't fancy where I'd been offered the job, if I'm frank. No matter how nice it sounded.
What does she do?
She works in public health in non-communicable diseases. So she basically advises governments how to reduce diabetes, heart disease, obesity, smoking cessation, etc. So that's what she does.
Oh,
and so that's what took us to St Helena. Well, I didn't lose the toss of the coin. I think, yes. But amazing. And I scoped it out. So I scoped it out well enough. And I'd been offered some work before I went. And actually, I think I ended up with about 3 jobs while I had to. Again, it was a good mix of conservation, agricultural upskilling, and involvement with the local conservation NGO there, the St Helena National Trust. So it was a wonderful 2 years, but for us, it was always going to be 2 years.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did a strategic analysis of their agricultural policy, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So what was the outcome of that?
Well, the key thing was that they were looking at the farming and being more productive. So they have a food security issue. There's a lot of, they get 1 boat a month. And you go in a shop and you can very rarely buy fresh fruit and vegetables. So they were looking at how to develop their own agriculture, and one of the areas that they'd identified was a pathway to this was agricultural upskilling training. So before they invested money in that, they asked me to do a full review and training needs analysis of the sector. So we did that, and then they commissioned me to do various outputs from that, ranging from setting up a program in the high school for agriculture and conservation and animal care to running workshops with growers and merchants to try and stimulate a bit more collaboration around the supply chain. To what else did we do?
Did you do anything around renewables?
Not directly. I had a good friend who was involved in setting up more solar panels. I did some work on waste management. I did some consultancy for Blue Marine Foundation, who actually asked me to go to Ascension Island for a month, which is a bang on the equator.
Yes.
And I spent a month on Ascension Island helping the Ascension government roll out their waste management strategy. So that was mainly around stakeholders on Ascension. And it's interesting when you get into this concept of waste on islands, because of course, ideally, we wouldn't upcycle or recycle. We just use less, just use less or reuse would be the best solution.
Yeah.
But of course there's waste. And so then you have to deal with it. So do you burn it, bury it, ship it? And I think there's probably a solution with a bit of everything in. But it was very interesting. Again, I'm no waste expert, but I learned a huge amount, as well as hopefully helping them get stakeholder engagement and roll out some of the policies around, for example, aluminium cans, which are worth enough money to fill up a shipping container and be shipped away for sale. So why bury them? You can sell them.
Yeah.
And I think that lesson was a good one.
Gosh, there's so many transferable skills that you've got. Why the Isle of Man? Why did you turn up here? Why did you want to apply for the role that you've got? Is what I meant to say.
I do believe in synchronicity.
Yeah.
It's something I've always believed. I could tell you lots of stories of where things have just aligned and it was meant to be, I feel, and so you go for it. And I believe that the Isle of Man is that case. So we were on St Helena. We both knew that we were coming to end in 2019, at the end of 2019. This job arrived smack on the right time. And immediately, things that were attractive were, A, it's an island, B, it's closer to ageing parents, which is important.
Very important, yes.
I also love the idea that it's a crown dependency because, although St. Helena is a UK overseas territory, independence and being a crown dependency, there's a UK overseas territories conservation forum, which includes crown dependencies and UCOTs. They're in the same club. There's a club there.
Yeah.
And I was also extremely impressed about the Biosphere status. So I view the Isle of Man as being. One more other thing is that one of my good friends from college, well, embarrassed now, Steve Taylor, who's a landscape gardener on the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
I'd visited him years ago with my Springer Spaniel at the time, spent quite a bit of time with Steve, explored the island. So I knew it was a wonderful place. So with that on my back, and then the independence, and then the remit, conservation has become far more important to me as I've got older. There's a huge marine input as well, which is important to me. So with a marine remit, a conservation remit, public engagement and education, independence, close to the parent, it ticked every box. And the potential I see of being, in the Wildlife Trust movement, the Isle of Man Manx Wildlife Trust is one of the smallest trusts. Before we spoke today,
listeners may not know that the Manx Wildlife Trust is. It's a branch of a bigger organisation. Maybe people do. I don't know, but yeah.
No, we're an independent charity.
Yes.
Part of a federation of 46 wildlife trusts
yes.
across the British Isles. So England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Channel Islands, Isle of Man. So in those meetings, that I've just come off a Zoom chat now with 46 CEOs, and I'm probably the CEO of one of the smallest 3 or 4 in terms of turnover and numbers of staff.
Yeah, sure.
But when you look at British, UK overseas territories and crown dependencies, we're one of the biggest. So actually we can be a role model, we can be a leader, we can be exemplar, we can create things that could be cascaded to places like, British Indian overseas territory or some of the Caribbean islands or the South Atlantic islands and help them do things better. So that's the sort of attraction for me of coming here, is that, we could be, as well as learning about the wildlife, we can actually be a leader in that sphere.
Yeah.
We're a big, small island, I think is the bottom line.
Yeah, we can be good. We can be what good looks like.
Yes.
This works, try this.
We can be it, yes.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. That's really great. I guess you'll know Bill Dale and Beach Buddies quite well then from the conservation angle and what he's doing in schools, which is excellent, getting in and educating kids that they shouldn't throw rubbish out, and getting in at grassroots and sort of promoting that learning throughout generations.
I've met Bill a couple of times now, and I listened to his pod. He was one of the podcasts I listened to.
Yes, great pod.
I'm a huge admirer of what Bill's done. Yeah. And I know something about this because I sit on the board of the Marine Conservation Society and a beach clean for years across, and set up beach cleans in St. Helena while I was there. So with that bit of knowledge behind me, I think what he's done on this island to rev it up to that degree is gobsmacking. And,
it's amazing.
And he deserves all the plaudits he gets. Yeah. I've said that to him, so he knows I won't be flanneling him if he ever hears this. And I think that's something we should champion. And it could be something, and I think the education as well. And actually, Bill has agreed to join a meeting that I guess I've instigated with the other environmental educators on the island. So how can we come together, share what we're already doing, maybe create a portal for schools so that they can see where they go and maybe start to work together on some things.
Yeah, what a fabulous idea.
Potentially joint funding bids, joint programs, joint resources, and do it better and make our Biosphere education programs absolutely.
Yeah, and you've actually raised a really valid point there too. I suppose because of the coronavirus pandemic, people have been short of money. How have you found the funding I guess the volunteering has had to stop completely because of the self-isolation. I mean, what's been the major impacts on Manx Wildlife Trust? I'm the guy on his own in the office, so of course we're home working. A lot of the work has stopped. The volunteers have ceased pretty much. So no midweek muckers. So no reserve maintenance. The gift shop in Peel has been closed now for over 2 months. All our fundraising activities and events have closed down. So,
literally even from talks or, events in reserves, or the exhibit Art of Nature in the House of Manannan had to close.
Yeah.
So the impact has been significant, but again, being glass half full, I don't think we're in the worst situation that many others are. So I'm thankful for that, and I think the Manx Wildlife Trust team, and by team I mean staff, trustees, volunteers, members, everyone, I think's been outstanding in how we've so far coped and just got on with COVID-19 lockdown. And certainly the ambition we've got is that we come back stronger.
No, absolutely. We had a meeting. I had a meeting with Trisha Sale right before this. We'd agreed that our team was going to go and volunteer somewhere, so we were just thinking of a good time and a site, and of course, and then lockdown came. So when it's over, we'll definitely get involved and do.
You'll be very welcome.
Oh, thank you. So, if you don't mind me asking, and I primarily ask this when I meet people in my role as a financial planner, what's your earliest memory of money? What was money like growing up for you?
Beyond pocket money and paper round, which I did, my two most stark memories of money as a kid were, one, as a very young kid, my dad used to grow vegetables in the back garden, and there'd be a blackboard on the side of the road, and I'd be selling lettuces at 10 pence a head.
Fantastic.
or a bunch of spring onions. So I guess I was introduced to horticulture at that point. But probably my most focused drive to get money as a youngster was in my school holidays in the autumn. Probably for, it seemed like every year, but I didn't go through childhood for 20 years. But it must have been 3 years of October, of a slightly longer October half term. I'd go spud picking. And I'd go spud picking, and we literally just spud bashing at a farm at Askham Bryan. I got on the team. My mate got me in, and then I went back for 2 or 3 years, and we just worked 12-hour days harvesting potatoes. And at the end of it, I'd go and buy lots of fishing tackle. So it bought me new match rods and Shakespeare fishing boxes and keep nets and all sorts for probably 3 years. So
fantastic.
First sort of sense of money.
Yeah, no, that's good. Instill a very good work ethic that way you can directly equate it with getting something that you really want. Now, brilliant. So, of all the things that you've done throughout your life, and you've done a lot already. So, what's given you the most fulfillment? What are you most proud of? And you can give you two here: personal and career.
Again, listening to your podcast, a few people have talked about children. Me and Angie don't have kids. We have lots of great nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
And we love them, and we enjoy them, and give them back. So that seems to work. So I can't go down the kids' road. I think personally, without probably a specific thing, I have been quite achievement focused. I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about.
Not at all. Proud.
And so, be it in college or I used to competitively fish for years, and I did get quite good at it. And we'll leave it there. But it was a focus for years. So that was something. But actually, in terms of fulfillment's an interesting word, but what's given me the greatest sense of achievement probably is the education and learning.
Yeah.
And I think being in a role where you can work with predominantly students. So, my education work has been in land-based colleges and also at the Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, running education in the School of Horticulture for years. And so in that, I learned that you can't rev every student up. And in my early years as a lecturer, I used to get a little despondent if the opportunities or the enthusiasm was almost, and you couldn't get a student to take a chance. But I quickly, and it didn't take me that long, realised that you infuse and give everyone a chance. And those that grab it, you take the joy from there. But I won't embarrass individuals, but there are a few people who I've had as, students that I've tutored or helped tutor that I've seen go on to careers that are amazing. And if I've been a little bit in helping them do that, then I think that's pretty cool. And then I got into the international development work, and on the back of going to India and Nepal and doing a master's in international horticulture, I applied and did a program for voluntary service overseas in Ethiopia. That was amazing. I ended up again, I actually did trade needs analysis in predominantly rose farms, would you believe? It was rose farms for cut flower roses to ship to the Netherlands into the UK. And Ethiopia was expanding.
Blimey.
BSO, voluntary service overseas, wanted someone to go in and help Ethiopian growers do it more ethically and also help the workers do it better.
Yeah.
And I went in, did a training needs analysis, and then ran workshops with Ethiopian supervisors and staff. And all I really did was get them in the same room from different farms, give them some topics, and facilitated workshops. But it was the best sense of achievement when you see all these people working together, sharing ideas about how to control red spider mite or powdery mildew, or which protective equipment to wear and why they needed to wear. It was fantastic. And again,
it's such a skill though to be able to bring that conversation out of people, So that's great.
No, it's wonderful, and I could talk about Laos and Haiti and various other places, but it's I think so. In summary, the best thing, the most satisfying work I do is helping people learn, and if I can inspire someone or enable them to do something better or to take a step up, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. No, thanks for sharing that. But for any aspiring or existing business owner or entrepreneur or even, community leader, what would be your number one business tip for those individuals who might be listening to this?
Oh, blimey. I can only give you one, can I?
Yeah, well, you give me loads. Give me as many as you like.
I think you can always do things better. I fall foul of saying you can always do things better because quite often people think by saying that you can do it better, it's some sort of criticism of the way that they're doing things now. And I have fallen foul for that a couple of times in life because I think you can do things better. And you need to be able to say that. You need to recognise that things will be better before you can do it better. Yeah. So I think understand that you can always do things better, that the little things matter, probably positive thinking. And I think ultimately for me, if you see a chance, then you should go for it. You should walk through that door. And that's probably the top tip I often give to, I used to give to students more, is that don't let those opportunities pass you by. If you can see that opportunity, go for it, get your vision, keep going.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And how about relaxing? What do you do to keep your life in balance? I did actually read your Manx Wildlife Trust interview in the magazine, but even in this weather, do you fancy putting on a scuba
I'd
gear?
love to.
Okay. It's actually nice underwater.
The Isle of Man has been in more of my time has been in lockdown on the Isle of Man than hasn't.
Gosh.
So I'm looking
to get out and about.
doing some more scuba diving and getting out on boats and some fishing and exploring the island. So social distancing and when we can go out, we're certainly exploring the island and enjoy walking. Yeah, I'm looking forward to engaging certainly more with nature and the sea.
Yeah, I can fully recommend it. It's a beautiful place to get out and about and see. As for diving, I haven't done that for a long time, but it was fun when I remember doing it. So tell me what you think of, I know you haven't been out much, but what are the best things about living in the Isle of Man that you found so far? Definitely
the community, definitely environment. I think it's undoubtedly it's a special place in that context. So I think the people, I like the island. I think the Manx culture and some of the stories and the fact that there is this identity of it being a independent place. I like that. I know I'm a come over. I can live with that. Hopefully I'll be one that fits in very well. I accept the culture. I think that's a precious thing. But yeah, I think for me the top things are the environment, the culture, the people, and the potential probably. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What would you say then are the main challenges that we face from what you've seen so far? Semantics. I'm going to flip challenges into opportunities, and if you want to get your opportunities, you need. There's a challenge to get your opportunities. I think of course, the COVID-19 is a challenge. What's the opportunity for the Isle of Man? Is I think probably to be I sense, and I'm no expert on this, but I sense that we're doing it right, and so I think the opportunity brackets challenge will be to ensure that we continue to do it right, and we get ourselves up and running as quickly as we can, as safely as we can. So, I mean, that caveats everything now, doesn't it? It does indeed. Yeah, I think our government's done a really great job. That's how I read it. Backsides off for 18 hours a day. Yeah, they've been good. That's definitely, again, it's not my expertise, but that's how I read it as a layman. So thank you and well done to them. I think the Biosphere is a challenge and an opportunity. And again, I hear different things about the Biosphere. I think it's brilliant. I think it's an enabler. I think it's a flagship that means that we can all, it's a clusterer. It's something that can drive things. And I think the challenge for us probably is to deliver on the potential of that. That's certainly where I see my role as the CEO of Manx Wildlife Trust, has been one part of a wider island solution to making sure that the biosphere is exemplar. So I think there's a challenge there. I think our position in the middle of the Irish Sea. Someone told me recently in the Wildlife Trust's head central office that, it's easier to get conversations with France and Sweden and Germany around North Sea marine conservation and fisheries than it is with England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales around the same table, because you get the sort of the nations differences, and it's seen as an English thing, and it's not the easiest format. But if you look at a map of the Irish Sea, it's actually a map of the Isle of Man. So we're in a special place for the Irish Sea, and we're surrounded by all those other nations. Right,
centre of the universe, Leigh.
No, but it is. It's certainly the centre of the Irish Sea. So why wouldn't we have a key role to play in being a facilitator, even if we're just a facilitator? If we can be someone that can get those people around the table to have the bigger conversations, then I think that again would be something that we could do. And going back to my other point, I think there's a challenge for us to be that exemplar for small island ecosystems.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. Thank you. So, what have you got planned next, other than trying to find your fishing stuff within all the things that you've brought over? What have you got planned for the Manx Wildlife Trust?
Yeah, through a series of Zoom meetings and lots of upskilling of staff and trustees, including me, in terms of using this sort of digital webinar concept. We've been through a whole strategic planning process over the last month. That was always on the cards. The current Manx Wildlife Trust strategy has got a year of ending, it's 2015 to 2020, so it was always going to be done.
Yes.
So we've been through that process now. It's going to be actually signed off, hopefully, by the board finally on Monday.
Right.
But pretty much there's three core strands, one around a nature recovery network, joining up areas of land for nature, one about nature-based solutions to climate change, and the other one about connecting people to nature. Yeah. So our new strategy launch and doing that is important. Coming back stronger from COVID and building partnerships, loads of partnerships. And you mentioned earlier, that agriculture is 75% plus of the land. So
88.
Yes, potentially, isn't it? Potentially. Google says 75, others say 88. So I've learned now to say it's 75 to 88 somewhere. We invited Manx National Farmers Union to be part of our strategy workshops. That was really positive.
Yes, Have you met Andy Cooper yet?
So we're looking hopefully to set up a memorandum of understanding with them and find ways that we can work together.
That's really exciting. That's so exciting.
Well, we know that we're going to have some differences.
Yeah.
But if we can be pragmatic and find a way, my personal belief is that, to use your figure, 88% of the island is agriculture. Manx Wildlife Trust nature reserves are fantastic special places, but they're 0.2% of the island. Imagine if Manx Wildlife Trust can help influence conservation as well as having our nature reserves over 88% of the island, even in a tiny way. What a net gain that would be for biodiversity. So I think we need to be collaborative, pragmatic, and find ways to help, respect farmers, disagree with them sometimes, and other times help them do it better. And I think that's the same rhetoric I'm getting back from MNFU. And, with my crop growing background, I'm looking forward to working with them.
Brilliant. Yeah, me too. That sounds so exciting. Just finally, to sort of start to wrap up this particular episode, we normally ask our guests just a series of quick questions, just to listeners like to know about. So, are there any what books have you read recently that you'd recommend?
I know I can get away with this because someone else said the same. I'm not a great reader. I do on holiday. On holiday, I read books. I do actually have Alex Ferguson leading his book "Leading" at the side of my bed, which isn't. It sounds like that's what I should say in this interview.
No, that's development, not self-development. So if you've not read it.
But I do admire what he did. And some of his interesting. So I think I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think a podcast I've been listening to recently was 13 Minutes to the Moon. And they did one about the Apollo 11 mission. And they've actually done recently one about Apollo 13, where it nearly was a complete. Yeah.
I nearly put my Apollo 11 T-shirt on for today,
Well,
actually.
I mean, if you haven't listened to the podcast...
No, I haven't.
It's brilliant.
So what's it called again, the podcast?
13 Minutes to the Moon. It's a BBC World Service podcast.
Okay.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read an interesting article about a guy called Alex Honnold that did, I don't know if you've ever seen the climber that did the free solo climb.
We watched it the other night. Oh, my goodness. It gave me nightmares.
My hands sweat at the thought of it.
Yeah, me too. Oh, have you been to Yosemite? Have you ever seen El Capitan?
I haven't. No.
It's something I'd like to do. Great, okay.
Podcasts, Nat Geo, Alex Ferguson, but don't hold Alex Ferguson over me.
All right. What's your favourite quote?
No, there's only one favourite quote on my list. It's rules are for the guidance of wise men and the adherence of fools, which is attributed to a guy called Douglas Bader, who was a World War II pilot that lost both his legs.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that I think everyone should disrespect all the rules. What it means to me is that you should question how things are done, and you shouldn't just do things as they are because they've always been done like that. And I think that's where sometimes you can get hang-tied by, you can tie your own hands together with rules rather than, be progressive and dynamic and change for good reasons. So rules are for the guidance of wise men and the adherence of fools.
Oh, you don't work in a regulated advice business, do you? I like that one, though. So where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing through the Manx Wildlife Trust and any other things that you want to do there? Please go to our
website.
Yep.
That would be the core, and people will see over the next few weeks, a lot of things happening on our website. So keep engaging with us.
Yeah. Have you got a Facebook page as well?
I do, and it's very, very active, and it's become far more so over recent weeks with a lot of my colleagues doing everything from live videos to lots more posts and lots of interaction. So it's a vibrant place. We've got a stay-at-home page on our website where there's various links to resources and films and other bits and pieces that people can watch and listen and interact with. We really, hopefully, if people do one thing out of this, please go to a Manx Wildlife Trust Facebook page or Instagram or Twitter and follow us and like us and link to us and connect with us. We'd love to get more people in our team, even if you're just a social media connection. Please join us. Well,
we'll put links to all of that in the show notes so people can click on that and find you that way as well. So that would be great. Well, Leigh Morris, thanks so much for your time today, being a great guest on Island Influencers.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.